Hello again. Looks like we are streaming, and I am coming to you from a public library in Vermillion, South Dakota. So many props out to them. I feel like the more I do this, let me get the chat up in case on the chance somebody wants to engage. I'm not going to remind my friends that I'm on here every time because hopefully I'm just doing this a lot of the time. And um, if haphazardly people show up, that's great. And if they do, then I want to do some chatting or at least responses. So I am going to get that set up. Let me see here. Docs. So I'm using OBS 31.1.2 as a video collage editor. Super handy for what I want to do. And YouTube is great for storing videos and watching them again. I'm always seeing new stuff in the samples that I'm looking through when I like rewatch part of it on YouTube. I'm like, whoa, I missed that. So it's sort of interesting when searching this fossil material, I kind of have something on my mind at that point in time, and then when I step back from it as an observer, um, I start seeing some different things. So let's see here. All right, great. Dock up the chat window as I can chat. Hello, hello. Please feel free to chime in with. Oops. Hello. How about howdy? Please feel free to chime in. Emoji there. Okay, that'll work. Cool. All right. I can. It's a little bit annoying to have that up there. Uh, yeah. Um, well, I did something so that now half of this chat window is occupied by what emojis I might use. I really don't want to see that. So, yeah. All right. I'll start a poll too. Okay. Um, no. Okay, there we go. All right. Sweet. Okay. Um, all right. So today I'm going to be going through this piece of peat material. And as you can see that there's some objects, some prominent objects that you can see those are roots. Those are Ceronius roots. I've already looked at this one even as a live stream subject. I've marked this one up. I've taken photos and stuff. Um, so still trying to wrap my head around exactly how to process all of these in a way that's thorough, exhaustive, um, non-biased, and I, yeah, it's just gotta sink into my walnut brain, I think, a little bit. Um, but just as a sense for scale, all right, there we go. Put me up in the corner there so you can See my charming face. Alright, so just for scale, and this is handy for me too, so I'm all the way maxed on my microscope here, which is approximately, it's just short of 80 times magnification. So what you're looking at there is a square that's 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters. And if we go there, like that's 1 millimeter. So maybe it would be handy to have just that as a rough guide. Um, Maybe toward the bottom. I don't know if that even matters. Kind of just like to have a consistent thing I can look at. But yeah, these tick marks are millimeter tick marks, and very little is going to be, well, there's going to be things of various sizes, but let's just put it right there. Okay. And then, yes, no, that's not a bad example for scale either. So that's about as small as you'd want to write with a marker that size. And then let me zoom out just a little bit. I see. I always like this as an opportunity to talk about my subject because that way I get better and better at describing it. So a coal ball is a carbonate accretion that occurs in a coal deposit, and as suggested, they're balls, they're not flat sheets like this. So how one of these is acquired is that one of these objects is cut, a surface is polished, and this is the surface of that is transferred onto an acetate peel. As you can see, there's some marks on it. Some of these have been made by my advisor, Dr. Ann Raymond at Texas A&M, and then some have been made by me as well, as I've been looking for coprolites. So I'm going to turn it to the non-glossy side. It's a little easier to look at. And let's just start by identifying a few of these mysterious objects that are on here. So you can tell that some degree of being intact or not. We've got these great big root structures. Let's zoom right on into what that looks like. Right. Ceronius roots. Ceronius was it's the name for the root of this given tree fern, and the spore-bearing structures that correspond to this root are Schuler-Urbandale. Just want to like appreciate that. Oh, yeah, look at that. Interesting. So yeah, that does look like, more than just a mineral pattern. Even if there is a mineral pattern in there, it certainly looks like there's, I don't know, are there little vascular bundles? Are there little starchy globs? Am I just reading too far into the tea leaves? Okay, now I'm gonna move the background so it's just white. Okay, that's a lot better, I think. And then that appears to be the edge of a root. No, that's kind of interesting. Um, that last one we were looking at, it seemed like there was a lot less color differentiation between cell wall and the rest of it. But this here we've got, you can see cell walls, and so there are these big open spaces, and then kind of intervened by cells, a network of cells, and then you kind of got the root cortex, it looks like. So however this thing was growing, it's probably differentiating along the line that you see there, separating the interior of the root from the exterior. And then what do we have here? This is as far as I can zoom in, so obviously that's going to be very small. So that is, less than 1 millimeter across. I'm not going to make too big of a deal out of it, so I don't really know what that is though. Sometimes it's easier if I look in here. I have a wider field of view if I'm looking at it through the scope, and what the eyes can see through a scope is a bit different than what you can see. Even if the camera is pretty good, it'll still be nothing like viewing directly by the eye. We see that there's a lot of pyrite accumulation here. So more on pyrite as I learn more about pyrite, but uh, it can be perceived, I perceive it as noise mainly, but also it could be evidence of past metabolic activity or exposure to microbes. So, and then what are we looking at here? Okay, maybe I should grab a photo of something like this. So at the very center, kind of see very small what's in focus. There's a bit of black cross hatching at the center of the view, and that is some kind of charcoal. So I'm going to take a photo of that. There we go. And then I'll wonder why did I ever take that photo? But yeah, continuing on. I think one thing that I need to do is train myself to look for bigger objects, because I don't think I'm looking for anything that entirely microscopic. But I am looking to really home in on what would you consider a coprolite versus some piece of plant tissue that's been disembodied. And one thing that we look for is comminuted debris. Um, and so rather than accuse any one of these objects characterized by comminuted debris as itself being a coprolite, I kind of want to take the whole scene into consideration. And say, what's going on here? So, what is going on here? Because I definitely see certain bits that you could categorize as being comminuted debris, some that I would not be able to classify necessarily, but they certainly look to be like plant tissues. And then there's, yeah, so that's pretty interesting. I'm going to take a photo here, and then I want to zoom in on part of this. I think that's the right approach. And of course I'll have this video to go back to kind of go through my work and see what I've actually been doing. So it's a good kind of accountancy. Okay, so right now I'm going for those tiniest things. Um, in fact, it's almost without a pointer, it's hard for me to tell you anything except for they're at center, they're at image center just about. There's kind of this tongue of tissue that extends from the bigger object to the left. Um, and then there's kind of these, well, again, let me just point out where they are. So what I'm looking at is, oh, there you go, right there-ish. You can see that round figure, and to me it looks like it's got kind of a surface of, it almost looks like those diagrams in animal development texts where we have like a blastocele or something like that. You have like a primordial sphere of developing tissue. Um, that's just what it looks like, but I'm not going to say that's what it is, and I don't think that's what it is. It's probably some kind of say, similar situation where it's maybe a developing tissue. Maybe it will develop into a spore-bearing structure or something like that. And or maybe it's a fully fledged spore or pollen or yeah, hard telling. And also hard telling what is that piece of tissue right underneath. Now, there's a way I can tell, and that is by referencing I have a handy map oops, that my advisor has prepared, and it's coded. So if I know approximately where that is, then there's some chance that I can identify it. So that's on a map that looks like this. It's gridded out. And of course it's like backwards. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be all that informative in terms of what this object is. Maybe I'm wrong. So I'm going to look just a little longer. See if I can make heads or tails of any of it. Okay, so if I back out a little more, it almost appears as though, let me move the computer just a little bit. It almost appears as though I'm looking at one unified object there that is like that, you know, about like that. So, yeah, what is it? Or is it one thing? It's been folded up on itself. And I'm always looking at stuff like this. Thread or filament kind of things. It always makes me wonder if it's part of an insect. but not holding my breath for that. And I'll just call that inconclusive. So yeah, it's hard to keep track of what you're doing when it's like, well, I looked here and I couldn't figure it out. Um, so then the question comes, well, what couldn't you figure out? Round and round. That's sort of interesting right there. On maximum. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could say what that was, but yeah, I can't really. So we go exploring, and then okay, look here. So that looks like some kind of accumulation of spore or propagule matter, something like that. That doesn't seem, at least not in any primary way, to be associated with a containing structure. So I'm going to get that nice and focused up. Actually make it bigger. It's awesome how big you can make things on this. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, what do we got going on there? I need to figure out a way to steady this camera a little bit more, because every time I touch it, it shakes, and that's not good for focusing. Okay. I need to put a wedge, I think, between the there we go, between the table and the stand. Firm that up. But this is okay. Yeah, what am I looking at there? What am I looking at there? And then what am I looking at here? Also a good question. Hmm. And then on the whole, it's sort of interesting because why are they there? Oh, and they're over, can't see them on the screen there. They're over here also. And this is sort of an interesting thing too. I'm definitely more familiar with this than I am with other peels. So I have gone in and looked at this before. So what am I to make of this array? of little balls. Little globular things. And then, kind of, well, actually, let me look at this. I'm always trying to, you know, with some skepticism, I'm trying to look for evidence, actual evidence of creatures. So now I'm looking for anything that will resemble also the globs of material that make me think coprolite. And I'm always looking at the intervening space structures to assess, okay, well, how do I think this got to where it is now, preserved in time? Yeah. So I want to draw your attention to this. This is sort of interesting. I do not know what this is, but it definitely looks like it has some sort of organization. Make it bigger. Yeah, there we go. All right, so very small, but what is that? Zoom, kind of zoom through it. I'm kind of thinking, because we're looking at fern material, I'm kind of thinking, and I've seen another one of these before. It could be kind of just the inner whorl of a fern part or something like that, something that's kind of yet unfurled itself, or yet to unfurl itself. And as sort of a similar example, draw your attention over to this thing right here. Why couldn't it just be something like that? Looks like it's sort of stalked. Looks like we're sort of seeing it from the side on this one, and that maybe, just maybe, for whatever reason, the big one that's a little more intact and has more dimension, maybe it's just sticking out at just the right angle. Because I think that's also whatever this is. I think that is also the same thing. And you can see as I kind of fix the zoom onto it, it's got this, yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out at some point, and then we'll come back and say what I found. But zoom out, take stock of where that is. And if I flip this over, we'll find, let's see, still kind of a trick to do this. There we go. So it's somewhere somewhere in here. Maybe it's that thing right there. It's harder to see from this side because it's not doesn't have the dimensional aspect. Oh, there we go. I found it. Yeah, so that's quite interesting, and I'm not sure what I am looking at when I'm looking at this. Let's see what we can do for. Bear with me here just a second. There we go. Yeah, so you can see how it's got this. Um, it's well-defined structure to it, and I just don't even know where to start trying even. Tell you what it is. In fact, given its small size, well, I've been tempted to call it something like a, um, it's not a foraminiferan. Yeah, I just don't know. It's not a bird's head, even if it looks like one. Not a bird eyeball. I can tell you that much. Try to find that again. And this is why it takes forever. I'm gonna have to cut this short pretty soon. But this will give me an index for how much I've obsessed over this little part of this little piece of peel. And never have to go back to it again because there are photos. I cannot find where I was. Oh, there we go. All right, so I think I gotta hang this up and try again another time. My library time is running out, so we'll see. See where I go next. All right.